Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Jim Benton here from Chorus for the daily briefing. And today we're going to talk about overall meeting volume, so updated data for the week, as well as executives, as well as buyers, what their involvement has been week over week. And then we're going to end on looking at payment terms again. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Neu. Ryan is founder and CEO of Vendr. Hey, Ryan. How you doing today?
Hey, great, Jim. How are you?
Good. Hey, before we jump in, how's life for you? How's life in Boston, and just how are you holding up?
Life is good. Yeah, so based out of Boston, been inside for about a month now. But it's been a roller coaster. There's been a lot of good signs, but also a lot of turbulence. But holding up just fine.
Nice. Any Ryan? You mentioned your Y Combinator company, killer product, by the way. And you're on the, you're up and building this business. Any surprises from a work from home standpoint?
Surprises, I think it's the extra layer of it's culture, basically. We went from an in-person culture, obviously, to fully remote. I used to work at Envision, which was fully distributed. But I can tell with our team now, they're looking for being a little more proactive with what we're doing to ensure that everyone's feeling good and healthy. So a little more diligence around, team health.
A lot of us have talked about how we just feel more productive right now. There's also changes. Are you feeling that way yourself, or how are you feeling about things?
We definitely are. So, I mean, we're really busy right now because I think a lot of people have questions regarding how to buy stuff, likely due to COVID. So we're busier than ever. And so from a productivity perspective, we're feeling very productive. But at the same time, it's finding ways to actually turn off the computer at a certain time. When you're sitting at home all day and night, it's easy just to extend the working hours. But definitely feeling productive.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think on my side, I got a haircut over the weekend, which I know everyone's talking about, from Anderson Cooper, but I had my wife cut my hair, which I didn't think in all the years of marriage would ever happen. This is clearly a new time for all of us. With that, why don't we jump into the data, Ryan? So we looking at the data for the week, this is the core data stat that we've tracked since the beginning of January in terms of the impact on COVID-19. And what we saw week over week is that there was a 9% increase in overall number of meetings that the sales teams are having across the entire market. So that's a good positive. We were down 11% the last 2 weeks from sort of the baseline. And so, we're seeing a bounce back. We're week 3 of the quarter. Is this consistent with the sentiment that you're seeing and feeling across your team and your customers?
Yeah, I think it is. I think for the first probably 3 weeks in a row, everyone was literally told, press the pause button. You're not buying anything.
Yep.
I think what's happening now is we're getting more to the point of, we're not sure if you're able to buy anything yet, but at least continue to plan for the future, and people will still need software. So we're starting to feel the barriers coming down a little bit, and it's less about you're not going to buy anything, and it's more about start planning on what you will buy, assuming you're allowed to.
And to that point, in Boston specifically, our past data has shown that Boston has had a bigger dip in meetings than a lot of the other markets that we've been tracking. I'm just curious if your read on that, if that lines up, or amongst your friends' companies, if you've seen that pattern. But has Boston been hit harder than other markets in terms of your sense?
I mean, the Boston community has, I think some of the staples in the community are companies like HubSpot that sells to small businesses. They're still doing very well. It appears. You've got DraftKings that is in the sports industry. Obviously, they're under immense pressure. You've got Toast that sells to restaurants. So some of the staples in Boston, I do think have definitely been hit by COVID. But it's more anecdotal. I think.
Yeah.
I think people are just now realizing that you're still going to have to be evaluating, even if you can't literally buy this month or this quarter.
In your sales cycle, how long of a sales cycle are you working around? Are people, you find that people are still engaging and wanting to talk about a buying cycle right now?
Yes. I mean, for Vendr specifically, our sales cycle is typically 3 to 4 weeks. they are willing to have a conversation if you can guarantee results. And so right now, like cost savings, people will take the meeting. If it's efficiency related, I think there's more reluctance. So for us, cost savings resonates very strongly. For a lot of vendors that we're helping people procure, if your positioning is related to this new world of working from home, we're seeing those sales cycles get expedited very quickly.
Interesting. So on that point, a lot of us have been talking about just the message right now. I mean, so to have a quick sales cycle means that somehow you're reaching these buyers, you're getting through during a challenging time. What are you doing? How are you doing that?
So for us specifically, we believe that there's no better time to be using Vendr. And so I think from a sales perspective and an outreach perspective, we believe that, and so we say that. And we sell to CFOs primarily, or VP of finance. And so our messaging outbound is that if you're ever going to consider Vendr, you should at least talk to us now, because we genuinely believe we're going to be able to help you more than ever. Now, we're also seeing that with a lot of the vendors that we help people procure, where one example, a Boston company is called Robin, and they do scheduling software for offices. And you'd think that no one would buy that right now because no one's in the office, but they're like, actually, there's no better time to do Robin because no one's in your office. That will allow you to actually install it. And when we do get back to regular course of business, you're going to also need to ensure that people are social distancing within the office. Our software allows you to do that. And so I think it's like this why now moment of like, it makes more sense than ever. And for Chorus, like we're users of Chorus at Vendr. I think for me, it's like your why now is like, you're now distributed. How do you help enable your sales and customer success teams with the greater trends that we're seeing, and also the one-on-one coaching? Like now more than ever, this is more important.
Totally. First of all, I love that. But hey, Ryan, I've been doing this daily briefing for, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 weeks now. Your comment that you just made about this local business in Boston, the one that you'd think right now would not be selling, that would be struggling, yet they're not, yet they found a narrative as an example. I just think that that's the inspiration for why we're even doing this. Like why we're taking our Monday morning and talking is that there's a lot of sales teams out there that are trying to rally, inspire their teams and get through a tough time. I just love that story. That is just awesome. Because it goes counter to what we see on the news media and what you think. You think sales has stopped, and clearly there's a lot of needs out there and a lot of problems to be solved. So appreciate that. Why don't we jump into one other data point here, or I got 2 other data points. So one is looking at specifically the executive involvement. And we looked at this mid last week. What's interesting is looking at the most updated data, it continues to increase. I mean, this is a really significant data point for the community. We have 69% increase in executive involvement versus pre-COVID-19, up 6% week over week for overall leadership involvement in calls. But this is really different. And I know that you're involved from a vendor standpoint on kind of these negotiations. Hey, why do you think we're seeing such such increase in executive involvement, and what impact is this having on deals?
So just speaking for our customers, we're seeing one consistency that we're seeing is that it's blanket rules now for specifically coming from the finance team, where finance is saying, literally everything you're going to buy or renew, we're going to be approving now. And that's a lot different than what things were like, a month or 2 ago, where if it's an engineering product, the VP of engineering was probably signing off on it. If it was a marketing or sales product, head of sales or marketing was signing off. We're seeing a trend where finance is saying it's still your decision of what you want and need, but on our side, we're still going to be giving it the stamp of approval. And because of that, we're then seeing much more finance involvement, specifically on calls, where they will, if they want to be part of the negotiation, that's one thing, but it's more of also validation of, we need this thing right now.
Yep. So that's a great point. So we now know that the deals that we're selling are going to go to finance. It's a pretty obvious statement now that you say it that way. What materials, or how do we change our message? How do we arm our buyers to get this through finance in a way that maybe we weren't doing this 6 weeks ago?
I think I think one important question to ask in the sales process now is, and it's okay, whatever the answer, if the answer's, oh, sorry, I'll step back. In the sales process, I think it's very important to ask, is this deal potentially going to get signed off now? Like, does it actually, do you have approval to buy this thing? Because a lot of people don't. And so if someone's in the evaluation and they're literally going to be buying in Q3 or Q4, like that's okay, but salespeople need to know that now so they can allocate the right amount of resources and attention to that deal. So number one, I would challenge your prospect and I would say, do you actually have, are you considering buying this thing now? If so, do you have finance approval to be considering this now? If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
If so, what is that finance team going to ask for? Are they looking truly for ROI right now? Or is this efficiency? Like, or do you already have the budget approved? Because a lot of deals right now are being evaluated, but they're not going to be procured. So as a salesperson, I would want to know that now. And as a buyer, I would want the salesperson to be accommodating to my timeline because these circumstances are not normal. So like the typical urgency doesn't work right now of I'll give you an extra discount. That's just not flying.
I think it's awesome feedback, and especially from the mindset that you guys are working on these vendor procurements. But we've got empathy at the front end, which is new to the messaging. We have new targeting to finding the segments that are growing versus maybe being more impacted. And now we have the ability for sales to really deeply think about how to get those extra slides or that extra message for the finance segment. I think it's beautiful. It's great feedback. The other data point is we are seeing more buyers involved. So we've got our sales team involved, which is, our leadership. By the way, do you find that you're joining more calls today than you were before all this?
Yes, plenty more, because even deals that are not currently up for renewal, a lot of companies right now are saying we're going to have a touch point with every single one of our material vendors, our material spend. We're going to have a touch point with them right now. So our volume has increased significantly because it's not just tied to the next 30-day renewals. It's tied to literally your company's entire stack.
Do you find that the conversations are run completely different now that you're involved in them, or on the calls that the exec team is involved in them versus before? Is this a positive? Is it a negative?
I don't know if it's a positive. I think in general, executives have, at least in my opinion, better things to do than haggle around commercials. I think other people can do that for them. When they're involved, it's likely because there's a disconnect between buyer and seller. And so if, and I'm a former salesperson myself, where we've always been taught, like, go above, get to the executive.
Yeah. At
some point, you've got to realize that you're asking for an executive's time. And is it actually qualified, or should that person be doing something else? So I think in this period of time, it actually might not be the best thing if they are on the call.
It's interesting. So just using that language of a disconnect, if you look at buyers, the buyers are now 57% on the executive side, more involved in calls than they were pre-COVID-19. It's, 10% up week over week. And in general, just a big trend. So maybe that's what it is. I mean, look, I think that makes a lot of sense, that there is more of a disconnect. There is more room to kind of figure out how we get into better alignment, better support in these calls. And it's showing up, and maybe to be positive when we start to see these numbers drop back down. One other area, and this is, I was excited to talk about this with you, given the procurement space. We've been tracking payment terms, just looking at changes in payment terms, and specifically looking at how, like, net 30, which is the light blue here, has dropped from, it was 76% of, most of the calls would talk about terms of just net 30. It's 56% right now. A huge shift to net 60, net 90, which, in good times, this isn't the end of the world. It's sometimes a small negotiating point. It depends on how the finance team runs this. Today, this actually could be more material, and I'm curious your thoughts on how you're seeing these changes and advice you'd have for companies where this is important and how to work through this.
Yeah, we're definitely getting this request a lot too, which is basically every time we buy or renew something, we want to extend the payment terms to help with liquidity. I think net 90 is, overall, it's viewed as you ask for it, but we're okay settling at net 60. That's one camp, which is extend our payment terms to help our company, meaning our customer's company, with liquidity. We're also seeing something else that I find pretty interesting, which is companies that are feeling good right now. They're saying we're not going to require payment terms from our vendors because we care about their liquidity. And if we're going to buy something, we want them to survive, right? But in those scenarios, if we're going to be paying up front for something and we're going to pay net 30, in return, we want help from a budget perspective, less so a cash flow perspective.
Gotcha. So it shows up in the overall deal terms. That makes sense. It's an interesting perspective on just the everyone working together to get through this and supporting each other. I appreciate that. One last thing I wanted to jump into is just a quick poll. So for those that are joining us live, the question today, Ryan, is just what negotiation lever is easiest for you to give customers to close a deal right now? So is it monthly, quarterly payments, extended terms, discounts, opt out, free time added to the contract? What would you encourage your customers to do if they were trying to, give a little extra to show some flexibility right now?
Well, I mean, the opt-out I would definitely say that would be number one. I also think it's not frequent. And there's challenges there with revenue recognition and things like that, I would imagine. I think for companies who have been hit, if someone's industry has been seriously impacted by COVID, I mean, most have, but seriously impacted, I would say right now, cash flow is king. So I would probably say monthly payments and extended terms. For industries that have been less hit or less severely hit, they're looking for the discount. They're looking for cash flow. Or I'm sorry, budget.
Gotcha. Makes sense. All right. So the data came in with monthly quarterly payments was the number one at about 50% of the respondents. And then opt out actually was tied with, just adding more free time to a contract, giving a little extra, flexibility there. Ryan, I appreciate you joining us. Your experience at HubSpot, Envision, and now building Vendr, a YC-backed company. Just awesome. Really unique points of view that I haven't heard in the last few weeks here. So just continuing to add that. So thanks for helping us kick off the week. And I wish you the very best this week.
That's great. It was great to meet you, Jim.
You too. I'll see you around.
Take care.